Yeah, 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 yeah. La.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Bottle Rocket. I'm Elena here with Maeve and Jerry, and today we're welcoming back one of our favorite returning guests, Mark Nussbaum. We've got a lot to get into today. Hi, Mark. How are you?
Great, Elena. How are you?
Very
No.
good.
I want to hit him with this. The last time you were on, I don't know whether you remember, but the Maple Leafs look like they might be a contending team. What happened? Sum up the disaster in your words.
So I think the last time I was on was February time, Elena. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe I think by then already we were ready to throw the towel in. I believe I was an advocate. I advocated for selling at the deadline. So I'm not personally surprised about what occurred over the, I guess, following weeks in the end of February, beginning of March into April. But I was like, really at that time, there wasn't really much optimism from a fan base that probably could have used it. I felt that a lot of things went wrong at that time. I felt that Coach Berube lost the room. Austin Matthews got injured slightly thereafter as well. William Nylander was not playing a committed 200-foot game. And when your two best players are injured or just not as committed as they probably should be to the hockey team, generally things don't go well. That's besides the fact that our roster that was iced was not a roster that was ready to contend for a playoff spot. So I think a lot of things went wrong. I think that coach lost the room. I think the leader of the team wasn't invested. I think the second best player on the team wasn't invested. I think injuries obviously didn't help either. But when things like this occur, you're generally just not going to see a successful run. And we did it. The last time the Leafs had any optimism was kind of going into Christmas time, around that time when we won 9 of 11 or 9 of 12 it was. And people were like, oh, maybe they found a spark. Maybe this is it. But since then, and it was just never it. And I believe I was a proponent of selling at the time in February. But to answer your question, Maeve, I guess is just coach lost the room, best players weren't invested, injuries didn't help, and the team just wasn't good enough from top to bottom. So that's where we got to where we are. And before I give the floor back to you, Maeve, I want to apologize publicly to our good buddy Jerry about his Canucks and the lottery. I feel terrible for you. I really do. I have a buddy who works for the Oxford Canucks, and I think everybody was rooting for you guys to just get a high pick. Obviously, I'm ecstatic as a Leaf fan because we were really in trouble and we got really lucky with God's grace. But I want to apologize to you because this is a big piece for us that we desperately needed. Arguably more than you guys just because we don't have our next two picks. So, but anyways, I feel bad for you guys.
I don't buy this coach lost the room alibi. How do you know the coach lost the room? The room is there. How does he lose it? You don't lose a room. The guy, this is a Stanley Cup winner, for crying out loud. He doesn't lose the room. You don't know that he lost. What's the evidence that he lost the room?
May, that's an excellent question. In my humble opinion, when your coach talks about a certain style of hockey he wants to play, and the players on the ice are not playing that style of hockey, to me, that is enough evidence that you lost the room. And Coach Berube, in his introductory press conference 2 years ago, blatantly said that he wants his team to play a hard-nosed game, be a hard team to play against, and win battles. And we weren't any of that come February and March. So when you're not anything that your coach described the way he wants to coach, I believe that's enough evidence to show that you lost your room.
Mark, where were you when the Leafs won the draft lottery and realized that they had a chance to draft McKenna?
So I'm currently overseas in Israel, doing a semester abroad over here, and I'm playing hockey. So I was actually in my room at 3 in the morning or whatever, 2:45, 2:30, somewhere between 2:30 and 3. And I was going bananas with some buddies from Canada who were also here with me on a semester abroad. So it was pretty crazy. It was pretty surreal. And I think it just changed a lot of things after a really tough Monday with that introductory press conference.
Do you think Gavin McKenna truly a franchise-changing player in your eyes, or people getting carried away?
Right, that's an interesting question. I think there's two parts to it. Number one is that I think going the NCAA route really brought the hype down on him because he wasn't breaking records the way he was in the W. But I actually think in the long run, it's going to be way better for his development. I think as a winger, it's very hard to change the direction of a franchise, but there are a few that can. Nikita Kucherov, David Pastrnak, Patrick Kane. I think he has a chance if he really, works hard in the gym and builds up his body a little bit to be that type of player because the raw skill is there. But I think the problem is that Leafs Nation tends to make assumptions on players pretty early, and McKenna might need a little bit more time, especially if Austin Matthews leaves and he doesn't have that number one center to play with. Now, if he stays, that conversation is very different, but I'm sure we'll get there soon. But in my opinion, I believe he has the potential to be a franchise-changing player. I think that the term generational talent nowadays gets thrown around way too much. Every player is suddenly every top three pick has the potential to be generational talent. Because Malcolm Celebrini, when he was being touted as a prospect, was not a generational talent. But then he came into the league, and look at him now. Team Canada just announced he'll be, captaining us for the World Championships later this week with John Tavares and Ryan O'Reilly serving as the alternates. So, I think that the concept generational gets thrown around. I think the potential is there, but I think we have to give him time because becoming a great player is a process. You can ask Nathan McKinnon, right? His rookie year, he had 62, 63 points, and then he had a couple iffy years, and then he found his own. I think we're seeing a very similar trajectory with Connor Bedard. I think not everybody's Matthew Shaper or Malcolm Celebrini, and I think it's there, but I think it takes time. And I think it really matters who this new Leafs management group, who this brass surrounds himself with. But yes, to answer your question, I believe the potential is there.
Okay, so Steve Simmons, one of the most reputable columnists on the continent, asked 20 reputable hockey people what they thought of the new management, whatever you want to call these guys, group is, and 19 reputable guys rejected them in one form or of another emphatically. How do you support the fact that they brought this group in where there's so many good people out there?
Maeve, that's a great question. I happen to love, as I wrote to you last night, I love what Steve Simmons did. I think reporters have to ask tough questions. I think that's their job. I think today's day and age, unfortunately, all media and sports and music and really everywhere in the world has become so soft. And I believe I'm a little bit, even though I'm a younger guy and a younger kid and a young adult, I believe in the old school approach of you're allowed to ask the tough questions because that's what tough questions are for. And that's why you got the job to be general manager of the Leafs. And I think that I don't want to delve too into this just because on a professional level for myself, I don't want to get myself in trouble. But I think John Chaik is a very smart guy. I've heard a lot of interesting stories about what he did in Arizona, and different sources have told me different things. But I will tell you one thing. In the line of business I want to go into / the business that I am in and the career I am trying to pursue myself, I believe that people should have to earn where they get to. People should have to earn the right to say what they are. And in my just understanding, John Chaika, when he got hired in Arizona, came from nothing to something. He didn't start as a scout. He didn't start as an AGM. He wasn't a forward player. He wasn't, a rising star. He just kind of came out of nowhere. And then he obviously had a disastrous ending there. And the NHL fined the team and stripped them of picks. And he also made some interesting moves. He made some good moves, but some not great ones too. And he just suddenly got this job at Toronto. So I don't love the fact that he hasn't earned anything. And I believe that everything Steve Simmons says probably is truth to it, because Steve, like you said, is one of the most reputable names in the game. And Steve is somebody who comes across as he has tough questions, but he's an honest and he's a lot of integrity as a person. So I agree with everything Steve said. I think he asked the right questions. I don't love the answer Keith Pelly gave. We discussed this both times I was previously on the show. The Leafs organization lacks accountability. And I don't think Keith Pelly has brought in that element that he probably should. Maybe he doesn't have it himself. Maybe he does. I'm not going to question him as a person. But bringing in a guy like John Chaika definitely raises a lot of eyebrows because he made a lot of mistakes. He has a very interesting reputation amongst the other 31 general managers in the National Hockey League. That being said, I am somebody who believes that second chances are deserving. I believe John Chaika is a very smart man. I believe he's very well spoken. And I do believe he does, now that he's hired and being, now that he is the general manager of the Toronto Maple Leafs, he deserves everybody to give him a proper chance to evaluate talent, to retool this roster, and to see what he can do. So to answer your questions, Maeve, I believe that John Chaika, I believe the past is the past. I definitely have questions myself, but as a person, as a human being, I believe second chances are important. And I definitely will be giving John Chaika my second chance. I believe he's smart. I believe he's well spoken. And I believe he has the potential to do the right thing. Can I see a scenario where it turns into disaster? For sure. But that's where I believe Matt Sundin comes into play. And Matt Sundin, obviously, Maeve, I'm sure you remember him. But Matt Sundin, I really need one or two things that he brings to the table for the Toronto Maple Leafs. And one is that he has to bring back the pride, the honor, and the courage it is to don the Maple Leaf. I think that's been lost over the years. I think we've seen that with the way the Leafs stars have negotiated their contracts, the amount, milking out every dollar. If people really appreciated being a Toronto Maple Leaf, I think these things wouldn't happen. And that starts from the top of the organization. And we're hoping that Matt instills that in our organization. And I also want him to bring that accountability that I was mentioning earlier. I believe Matt is a hard worker. He's a leader. He knows what it means to wear the blue and white and be successful. I was going to say win, but he didn't win a Stanley Cup, but he definitely won playoff rounds. And he knows what it means to bring success to a city that is starving for it on the playoff level. And I believe that I believe and hope that the vision of Chief Pelly is to take this combination of passion, of hard work, of somebody who knows what it takes to win in a city that, is harder to win in a sense because there's so much pressure, with a guy who's very smart and sees the game in a different lens, and bring that old school approach of, the old hockey eye along with the new analytical approach, combine them together and hopefully make something very successful. Do I believe it'll work? I hope. Well, can I guarantee it? No. I think there's a bigger chance Gavin McKenna is a generational talent than John Chaika and Matt Sundin continue together, for the next decade or so. But at the same time, I want to give everybody a second chance. I hope Matt Sundin stays in the long run. I hope John Chaika can prove he can stay in the long run.
Okay,
So-
you're giving us a big filibuster. Okay, first of all, it was a dumb move. Don't tell me about he did some good things or blah blah blah. He's a guy. It's like comparing a guy who's 60th in scoring with McDavid, who's a proven guy. There are so many other good people out there. I don't know why they ever settled on this guy. As for the Sundin, he's like a cheerleader, nothing more. And I can't believe these guys are going to be successful compared to the truly competent, experienced guys who have no black marks against them that were out there. Beats me, and obviously it beats a lot of other people.
I agree.
What role
Maeve, I
do you
agree
guys
with you.
think Sundin will realistically play in the organization? Symbolic, or he genuinely is going to influence the culture?
I just told you he's a cheerleader. Do you think these players now who have agents, they listen to their agents? They're not going to listen to this guy, and hopefully, but they're probably going to can Berube, right? He's going to get fired. So it's going to depend on who the coach is and whether they're going to listen to this coach. Also, it depends on whether there's competency in this lineup. Is it not true that Austin Matthews wants to get the hell out of here on another team? Yes or no?
Across that way.
He wants to get out of there. He's probably went to his agent and said, get me some out of here. He sees, why would the captain of the team in a situation like that say something as negative as this at a critical time? If he really cared about the Heat, he would have shut up. He cares about Austin Matthews playing in a more healthy situation than this.
Maeve, I just want to say again, I said something, I know I gave you a little bit of a filibuster, my apologies for that, guys, but I just on a professional level want to be a little bit careful about what I say. But Maeve, a lot of what you said in terms of the hire, I agree with. I think there's a lot of other very smart, bright hockey people out there. I just don't want to get myself in trouble. So I want to be able to balance those two concepts. I agree with you. If I were in the shoes of Keith Kelly, I believe that I would have hired somebody else, including Scott White, et cetera, et cetera. I don't believe Keith Pelly's worthy of being president of MLSE. So this is a whole different conversation. I personally believe that since he's gotten involved, it's gone downhill, and he's not great on a professional level at a press conference. He reads off a paper, and that to me is something also. Like, how do you, as president, I don't want to get stuck on this point, but if anybody watched the introductory press conference, there were two people reading off a paper, and there were one that wasn't. John Chaika and Keith Pelly reading off a paper. How do you walk into introductory press conference and Keith Pelly? This is his job essentially. He's going all in on these hires. Matt Sundin spoke from the heart, but the other two were just like Keith Pelly. You could see him clearly starting his press conference, reading off a paper as if like this is a presentation in 7th grade. And again, I don't want to go so far into this because it's a sensitive topic, and I don't want this to bite me down the line. But Maeve, I do very much agree with you. I would have went a different direction, but I do believe in second chances. So I am willing to give this a second chance. But I also do agree with you that this is not the smartest hire, in my humble opinion. But I'm willing to give Keith Pelly and MLSE a chance here. But I don't believe in their success down the line. I don't think this is going to be successful. But I hope it is, and I hope to be proven wrong. And I'm rooting for the best for everybody involved. But just the way, there was one story that really sticks out for me that I think Simmons reported on. It was just that when Chaika got fired in Arizona, Billy Armstrong, who was assistant GM at the time in St. Louis, came in, and he comes into the front office. He comes into the team offices in Arizona, and he goes to Chaika's desk, and he sees 6 computers there. And he's like, oh, this guy, he's using 6 computers. Well, I only need 1. And he turns on 5 of the 6, and they weren't working. So clearly they were there just for show. I don't know if that story's true or not, but it sounds like it had credible sources. But whether it is or it isn't, like if it is, that's horrible. And if it isn't, I feel bad that they were framing Chaika like that. But regardless, this is a very polarizing hire. I believe that Berube will keep his job, actually, just because I don't think there's enough time. I don't think the coaching carousel is great out there. Bruce Cassidy is out there, and I believe he's an excellent coach. But I think Chaika's going to want to find his guy, and he might give runaway to Berube because I believe Chaika has a couple of years before they ever look into seriously firing him if he has fireable offenses.
Let the guy from British Columbia talk, will you? Come on, Jerry. What do you think? And tell us in British Columbia ease.
Well, I've been talking to everybody in Vancouver, and we all agree that Mark rigged the NHL draft lottery. We know it was you, Mark. So,
I didn't want to get in trouble.
Jerry.
You're getting him in trouble now.
That's up to it.
Thanks,
How did
Jerry.
you do it? How and why did you do
Thank you, Mark.
But you know what? I disagree wholeheartedly. I don't think Gavin McKenna is going to be that guy. I watched him a lot at Penn State, and I know he was probably the youngest guy on the ice most of the time, but he didn't stand out, not at all. I mean, there was so many times that he was not even the best player on the ice, and it just. He doesn't have great speed. He doesn't have great power. He's not big, and he doesn't have a great scoring touch. What he's got is great vision and great hands for, setting other people up. So, I'm not a big believer in him, and I think Toronto and San Jose will see it too. And I firmly believe at number 3, the Canucks will still get stuck with Gavin McKenna.
That's key. This is the key issue so far on this show. I believe, like Jerry, that this guy is a virtue of press clippings and nothing more. They got to have somebody they're picking as the number 1, so they go with this guy. And I think he'll be if he stays on the team, he'll be a 3rd liner, or they'll push him on a 2nd line, and he'll fail.
Oh boy, man,
There's
that's a hot
actually-
take.
There's actually a debate whether they should keep him or consider trading him for immediate help, get a defenseman instead. What do you think they should do?
I think there's many ways to go with this pick. First of all, Jerry, I want to tell you, I apologize for rigging the lottery. The reason I did it was because I knew that we could sell more McKenna jerseys in Toronto than Vancouver. So I thought it'd be better for the market. But I will say that I think there's a million directions the Leafs can go. One is to keep the pick and take McKenna. I think there's people in that organization that are going to want to take Stenberg too, because he might be more NHL ready. I think and then obviously there's the third way, which is trade the pick, get more assets, because the Leafs are in big trouble. Because if I know we didn't get here yet, but if Austin Matthews wants to leave, you trade him now. The issue at hand is our next 2 picks are unprotected first-round picks to Philly and Boston. So we don't own our 2 picks. So the Leafs are obviously trying to convince Matthews to stay, and they're going to overpay in free agency on some players, which they finally have the luxury of having cap space. So that's why I don't believe they're going to trade the pick, because I believe that Austin Matthews says, listen, you got to take McKenna or Stenberg, probably McKenna. And I have a legitimate first line winger with me that I lost Marner. I lost that playmaking player. Again, Nyes is an excellent player, but he ain't Mitch Marner in terms of his vision and his creativity. And I believe that Matthews, that helps a little bit move the tide in a positive direction in terms of their long-term relationship. But I do see a scenario where, or I guess I do see a way they can trade the pick. It might be very smart to do, but at the same time, I just don't think you can afford doing that, because you don't want to be bad next year, because then you don't own your first round pick, and the year following you don't own your first round pick, and Austin Matthews is under contract for 2 more seasons. So I don't see a scenario in which we trade our pick. And I see a scenario, unless Austin Matthews really wants to get traded, and then they can really blow everything up.
What's going to happen is the guy, Matthews, has a Hollywood agent, big time agent. A couple of other guys on the team have him. He's looking at this situation. He's saying, my guy Matthews is in his prime now. If he stays in what could be a hockey hellhole next season, it'll ruin his career. They're going to try to get him into a town like L.A., Chicago, New York, get him out of Toronto. I can't see him staying there. And as far as, we don't know who the coach is going to be. The coach is going to have a big effect on what happens to this rookie. So we'll just have to wait and see.
Maeve, can I ask you one question?
Go ahead. What are you waiting for?
No, I couldn't hear you say go ahead. Sorry. I don't know. This is an interesting point that I was talking to somebody about yesterday. Austin Matthews, the last 2 seasons, has not been the elite player he once was. And I know he's supposed to be in his prime, but he hasn't scored goals or produced points or produced offense the way he did the previous 7-8 years. So, I know you mentioned prime, but again, I'm not doubting him as a player. I think he's a wonderful 2-way player, but he's not, in my opinion, he's not a top 10 player in hockey right now.
So what? The point is, he's got to get out of there. We know what we see what he's not done, and he's the captain. And what kind of captain was he? What kind of leader is he? So they're going to see what they can get for this guy. There'll be teams that be interested in him. But he is part. You have a crazy situation. You got the richest hockey team in the NHL, tops, and it can't even figure out how to get itself into the playoffs. And that's what his big time agent is seeing and smelling. That room is not good. Doesn't smell good. You got to find another captain also, and that's not going to be easy.
Yeah, it's interesting. Him and McDavid share agents.
I think Matthews bristles under that captaincy, and a great indicator of what the team thinks of him was the Radko Gudas hit when there was absolutely no response whatsoever. And even the following game when they played Anaheim again, the response was underwhelming at best. And, they made Gudas fight, and that was it. And they never laid a hand on him the rest of the game. So, I just because he's a great player doesn't mean he's a great leader. And I don't see him in that role. And I think that if he stays in Toronto, I think the best thing they could do is strip the C from him. They did it to Darryl Sittler. and so I think, history could repeat itself here.
If they take the C away from him, the problem is they're going to give it to the other guy who's not worth it, and that's Tavares. So you're going from one waste to another. The only thing I say about Matthews, He's from Arizona. He wants to go back to a stateside team. He's had enough of this. Toronto is the hockey capital of the world, and look what it's done for him. Get him out of there.
Jerry, I want to ask Jerry. The one thing I'll say to you is, you might be right. It might be time to change up the leadership group a little bit. But Daryl Silver in the 70s and 80s is very different than Austin Matthews 40, 50 years later. Athletes nowadays, they are much more controlling. They have much more authority themselves. And I don't see a scenario where the Leafs do that, especially I can't see a 35-year-old John Chaika going over to Austin Matthews while he's trying to sell him on the team and stripping him of the sea. I don't see that being a reality. Again, I think Maeve is very right. I think Austin probably wants to leave. You probably should leave, honestly. But at the same time, I think that John Chaika and management, their goal is to keep him here. Their goal is to keep him in Maple Leaf. And I think that's what they're going to try to do. Whether that happens or not, that remains to be seen, but we'll find out very shortly, as well as our decision with Coach Berube.
Well, like you said, they need to replenish their draft picks. So,
Yes.
Matthews would bring a king's ransom in that regard. And especially this year, St. Louis has 2 first-round picks. The Canucks have 2 first-round picks. I think, and not that I want Matthews in Vancouver. I would much rather see him in St. Louis, but there's deals to be made there. The 2 first-round picks.
Yeah, and I just want to say, Jerry, on your point, I don't know how many elite years Austin Matthews has left. I think he's gotten injured a lot more than people realize. And again, he has that shot, but his wrist it hasn't been the same for a couple of years. Again, the guy at his peak is the best. He's the top goal scorer in the NHL. But I just don't know if we'll ever get that version. And I hope we do, because it's must-watch TV and it's great for fans and the league and any team he plays for or plays against. But I don't know if we're ever going to get that again. And I hope we do. But he's gotten injured a lot, and he's changed his game a little bit. I think these injuries it's tough. It's tough. It's really tough.
His value is down right now as well. Who knows
For sure.
how he's going to come back next season. We don't know.
I want to say one interesting point to you guys, because everyone's talking about the coach. So when Kyle Dubas got fired, him and Spezza left and they went to Pittsburgh, the Leafs went after the biggest name out there, which at the time was Brad Treliving. And we all see how that one played out. Treliving, his tenure as a Toronto Maple Leaf general manager was horrendous. It was a disaster. Overpay after overpay, terrible asset management, some decent contracts signed and a couple decent moves, but overall was not a great positive experience for the Leafs management group at the time. So Bruce Cassidy, I believe, is the biggest name out there. I think Bruce Cassidy's a better coach than Brad Treliving is as a GM. I don't think Brad Treliving has made so many great moves if you go back to his Calgary days. But at the same time, I don't know. I think that Leafs management, the upper echelon that's probably still there, not like the Chaikas and the Sundins, but above that, the Keith Kellys of the world, I see them saying, you know what, let's give Berube a chance. Let's wait for the right coach for us. Because if they don't see Bruce Cassidy being a great fit, which he totally can be, because he is somebody that he doesn't really stay places too long. He's like a 3-4 year coach, but he does get the best out of his players. So I can see that being very good for a Leaf team that might need a real shot in the arm in a different way, even though we all thought Berube would provide that. But I don't see the Leafs just hiring for the sake of hiring. I think Chaika and Sundin and Kelly and the management group, they're going to hire when they feel it's right. And I'm not sure they feel that right now, because a lot of the coaching carousel is a lot of great coaches got picked up. I think Pete DeBoer would have been amazing, but he was already scooped.
You said to give the guy a chance. Is that right? Is that what I heard, right?
Yes.
Well, why would you give this guy a chance if you're saying that he lost the room? What, if we're going to have a whole new room that he's going to walk into? He's going to go back into the same room that he lost. So what the heck? How do you justify that?
So I'll explain to you. I'm very careful with how I said it. I said to give John Chaika a chance, and I said that I believe John Chaika is going to give Berube an opportunity. I still think that he lost the room. And Dave, you asked me earlier on about why I thought that, and I think you didn't argue with me, which probably means that you agree that he lost the room after the way I explained how I thought he lost the room.
I don't agree about him losing the room at all, because I don't know what the hell goes on with that team. But I do know that there is something wrong, and it could be that it's the room and not the coach. And certainly, if you look at what happened with Q going to Anaheim and absolutely turning that team into a winner, a miraculous thing. So I don't. There's just so many good guys out there, and the team is so much the richest team in the league. So you bring a guy in, give him the big dough, and see what. Don't go with a guy who's rusty now.
But we tried that with Mike Babcock, Maeve. Remember?
What about you? Want to bring in Babcock?
No, we tried that with him already. We gave him 8 years. We have $50 million.
Who do you want to bring in? Bring in. Tell me who you want to. You want to bring in Cassidy? Bring him in.
I think Scotty Bowman.
That was a joke. Scotty's in California forever.
Yeah. Maeve, let me ask you, what do you think about going off script? What do you think about what do you think about hiring a guy like Bobby Olik?
He would be incredible, I think. He's a great coach.
Bobby Olik is not interested because Bobby Olik is very well off. He is very comfortable living in the States, and he doesn't need to go to a job where he knows he's going to be fired. He's not, he's a very smart fellow. What? You know what? We had a guy on yesterday who would be perfect, Tom Runny. Tom Rennie would be the guy. There you go. Tom Rennie is on the level of Joel Quenneville. And he's smart, and he knows how to handle people, and he's not going to say stupid things about the players should do this or that. But I don't know whether, Tom may not need migraines working there. I don't know.
I mean, I agree with the Maven. I think that the Leafs have the resources to bring in whoever they want. I just, I've never been a fan of Keith Kelly and what he's brought to this team. So whatever he brings, I don't see myself being such a big fan of. But at the same time, I am somebody who believes in second chances. So just like with John Chaika, I think that I don't know. I don't know what they're going to do. There's a lot of decisions to make. And what if Austin Matthews says, bring in this coach and I'll stay? And, Maeve, he might not be the greatest coach, but Austin Matthews wanting to stay. Like, what do you do? Because that's what McDavid did. And I don't think, Knobloch's a good coach, but, McDavid's agent is Jeff Jackson, his former agent, is the president of the Oilers. Right now, then McDavid switched to John Moldaver, who's also Matthews' agent. And then his former other coach in juniors is now his coach, Chris Knobloch. So, I don't know. If Austin Matthews comes to the Leafs and says, he wants Steve Sullivan, his minor hockey coach of the Arizona Junior Coyotes, to be his coach, what do you think the Leafs do? What do you think they say? Because they can have all the money in the world, but if their best player wants something and that's how he's going to stay, they'll probably bend to that,
Do you think he's considering actually leaving?
Enough time on this Toronto. I want to hear about Vancouver. There's a guy who knows about the Canucks, is concerned about the Canucks. What's going to be there? What do you think they're going to do?
General manager first. I imagine they will do so before the draft, and then whoever it is got to, like Mark was saying, he's got to reinstill the pride in being a Canuck, and the saying is, you don't play for the name on the back, you play for the logo on the front, and Canucks have lost that, and Adam Foote, in my humble opinion, has been an unmitigated disaster and is just not cut out to be a head coach, at least not now, and so, I think they got a clean house. They got rid of the general manager. They got the coaching staff, and some of the roster, and start from scratch, build through the draft. That's one thing the Canucks have been terrible at, is building through the draft. And they stop trading your first round picks. Stop that. We traded the first round for Philip Roenick. I think that was the only one that ever worked out, and so, I firmly believe that the only way to build a contender is building. Look at Minnesota. They built through the draft. Look at Colorado. They built through the draft. It takes a while. You got to be patient and let the players develop. But, you get a great director of player development, and you let them develop the players. You start in your minor league system, and you bolster that, and then let the results speak for themselves. And the Canucks have completely lost their way. And personally, the one to blame, I think, is Francesco Aquilini. He just cannot keep his finger out of the pie, and you got to get somebody who is going to let the hockey people run the hockey team. So, the problems are myriad, and just like just like the Leafs, we got a lot of decisions to make, and former Canuck Matt Sundin, I think, is going to be a definite asset to the Maple Leafs.
Would you bring in Rennie to be GM of the Canucks?
In a heartbeat. I would love to have Tom Rennie back in the fold here. He's, there's nobody in the hockey world I have ever experienced said a bad word about Tom Rennie and his experience with the Olympic team, and his in the NHL and junior. He's had nothing but success, and yeah, you would want a guy like that in the. I don't know what he's doing sitting on the sidelines. It's it's incredible.
Too smart,
Jerry.
I guess.
Jerry, two things. First of all, I want to congratulate you on one thing, that Aquilini's finally decided it was time to build a practice facility in downtown Vancouver. So that'll help out at least a little bit, because it was pathetic that you guys were practicing out of your home barn, Rogers Arena. So that was some decent news out of Vancouver for the first time in a while. The other question, that's point number one. The question for you is, do you feel, it sounds like for Frege that Pierre Dorian's getting a real shot at this? I actually thought he did a great job in Ottawa. I feel bad he didn't get to see it through, because I think he made some great decisions there. And like you just touched on so nicely, to build through the draft. And Pierre did a pretty good job at that. There was one pick which he really swung and missed on, and that was a couple years back. I think it was 10th overall, Tyler Boucher, which could have been a really good pick for them, but they swung and missed. So, do you feel that Pierre Dorian can be the guy for you in Vancouver? I know you guys have been mentioning Tom Rennie, and like you all have said, I've only heard the best things about him, and I'm excited to listen to the podcast with him. But it sounds like Pierre Dorian's getting some real serious interest in Vancouver. How do you feel about that, Jerry?
Yeah, I'm 50-50 on that. I've been reading good and bad about Pierre. He's got his detractors in Vancouver, and what they say makes a lot of sense. But he's an experienced hockey guy, and yeah, I don't know. Like I say, I'm 50-50. I'm on the fence. So I'd like to see who else is out there, and see what else we can get, because you talk about these executives, and there's top shelf executives, and then there's the second tier, and I think Dorian's in the second tier. So I'd like to see a more like a, I don't know, like, not as an example, but somebody like Brian Burke or Pat Quinn, or a super boss, that can drive the ship, and I'm not sure Pierre Dorian has that kind of personality where people will go to war for him.
Jerry,
I want to tell you, Jerry,
how much blame do you give to Rutherford for this mess?
I know he's a friend of yours, and but
forget about that. I'm talking about your hockey.
But how can you not? He's the leader of the ship. He's the captain, and everything. This whole, brouhaha has happened under his leadership, and he just kind of just watched it happen. And didn't do anything. Didn't do anything constructive about it. Just let it go on and on and on. And then, so how can you not? But he didn't get dumb overnight. He's still a great hockey mind, and I just don't know what happened, in the recent history here. But like Mark has mentioned, give somebody a second chance. I think Jim Rutherford, like I say, he didn't become stupid overnight. I think he deserves a chance to right the ship anyway. Because I like him. I like him personally.
Absolutely. Jerry, I want to ask you a question. There's two names in the I guess retiree world that have been assistant GMs for the last couple of years who I really like. Both of them have spent time with the Maple Leaf organization. I just don't believe they've actually had a say in what's gone on. I believe they've just been there. Number one is Jason Spezza, and number two is Shane Doan. I don't think either will end up in Vancouver. But are those two names that you're intrigued by, or you're looking for more of an experienced hockey minds who can help set the tone?
Yeah, I'm very reticent to put a former player in the GM's chair because just look at Chris Drury in New York. It's he's been terrible, and somehow he keeps his job. And I would be, and yeah, what I'm hearing is they're leaning toward Ryan Johnson, who has been the GM of their minor league team, and he's been in the Canucks organization forever, so he knows where all the bodies are buried. He knows all the secrets. He knows every detail there is to know about the organization. So I'm kind of leaning towards that. Ryan Johnson being the GM.
I think the team that got the best deal out of the draft is the Sharks. They got the second pick, and they have Celebrini for a few years now. So
What's good about the second pick? What about him?
Well, I mean, they already have Celebrini. They might want to add a defenseman and trade the pick.
Elena, I want to chime in here and tell you, in my opinion, I think the Sharks are a win-win because if they want to go best player available, which historically is always way, way, way smarter than reaching for a need, then they'll take either Stenberg or McKenna, meaning whoever the Leafs decide to take. So it's really all the pressure on Toronto. Maeve, with regards to your question about everyone, we're presuming McKenna goes one. Stenberg is an excellent player out of Sweden, put up great numbers in the top Swedish Pro League, the SHL. Brought Sweden their third World Juniors since the 80s. The third gold medal at the World Juniors in Minnesota this past December. He's an excellent two-way player. He is built for the NHL now. He's about 6'2", almost 200 pounds. Plays an excellent two-way game. People say he's very similar to like a Nico Hischier type of player. A two-way player, could put up about 80 points. And a lot of people just believe he has a higher floor as a player, like he's a safer bet, but McKenna has a higher ceiling. And that's who the Sharks are going to potentially be looking at. In terms of what I think the Sharks will do, Elena, I believe the Sharks are going to actually trade out of their pick. I think they'll trade a couple picks down because they'll recoup some assets, which they'll then use at the deadline next year when they become buyers. They will draft the defenseman like you suggested, but they'll draft him a couple picks down because they have the opportunity to wait. And don't forget the Sharks also have $40+ million in cap space. So I think the race for Darren Radish, the top right-hand shot defenseman, who the Leafs so desperately need, will be between the Leafs and the Sharks. And both teams have a ton of cap space. The Sharks have about 40 million, 45 million. The Leafs have about 26. So either way, Radish will go home with a lot of money. But I believe those two teams will be going after him. And I believe if the Sharks keep that pick, they're drafting an offensive player. But I do believe the likelihood is they trade it.
I want to talk about the playoffs. Carolina, is anybody going to beat them?
I think they might win the cup.
Well, but why? Why? What? They never do win the cup, and what makes them different now? They got a good goalie. He was a terrible goalie in the past. Terrible goalie. But Minnesota now coming up with that big win, they might figure out how to beat those guys from Denver. I hope they do anyhow.
Do you think Vegas is going to be a threat if they get past the Ducks?
Look, we had Rennie on, and Rennie gave a great endorsement to John Tortorella, especially the way he put it. He gets the team going in a hurry. And the team is leading in this series, but this is another, these are great playoffs to watch. Even, you got to give credit to Philly for giving their best, certainly against Carolina. You got to give Ottawa credit. Ottawa had 4 defensemen out, and they played well. But I just love the way the Carolina team has been playing, and they've been getting the goaltending. That was the weak spot.
Jerry, you were saying that their goaltending was a bit shaky.
Yeah, I've never been a Freddie Anderson fan. I think he falters at the worst possible times, but he has proven me wrong in this. I've been watching him, but he's changed his game. He's playing way more in the blue paint now, and he's very efficient, and he's compact, and he's not moving a whole lot. He looks very stable in there, and he's very tough to beat. And that's what you need in the playoffs. And he's, like I say, there's still time. They're only halfway, and they've only played 8 games. So there's still time for him to falter. But I don't see, either Buffalo or Montreal beating Carolina the way they're playing right now. And the only factor that can come into play is that Carolina is going to be off for at least a week now, maybe 10 days. And
Exactly.
it's hard to flip that switch back on, and so we're like you say, these playoffs have been the most interesting playoffs in a long time. I'm loving every minute of it.
The coaching is so important, and Brindamore, just like Tom Rennie said, he could coach a fire hydrant. He's
I love
the
that.
perfect coach at this time for his team. Now, I'm a big fan of that guy who's coaching in Minnesota because we had John Hines in Jersey, and John Hines to me is like a latter-day Tom Rennie. He's cool. He's got respect from the team, and we'll see what happens in Game 4. If Minnie wins Game 4, the series is tied. Could be terrific because Minnie's got some good players, and they got that kid on defense who is going to wind up in Jersey, but right now he's in Minnie.
Do you think Quinn Hughes will extend his contract with Minnesota?
Tell that to his mother.
I think he'll stick around.
And we got to talk about what's going on now, not the future. And the now is that the team came back with a big win. They got a good coach, and they got one of my favorite general managers in Billy Guerin. And I think you got a case with Billy Guerin where the spirit in him goes down into the dressing room. And they've got a coach who can translate that. But we'll see what happens. We all know that Colorado's got a good team. I guess it's a situation similar to what I was saying. They have a very, very special coach at the best time for Torts to be there. And they have a lot of good players. I was reading today, some fans were writing in, well, what's the big deal with Marner? He's beating easy teams. First of all, there are no easy teams. And second of all, it's typical Toronto sour grapes. From the sour grapes Leaf fans. They can't abide the fact that this guy Marner, who knew damn well he had to get out of Toronto, and he did. And that's why I say you're going to see the same thing with Matthews. But the important thing, when you're dealing with a team like Vegas, you got to look at the fact, well, do they have a good goalie? And does this guy Hart have the goods? Well, they're leading the series, so we'll see. But right now, I gotta like a team that has Eichel buried because he wasn't picked up with McDavid, but right behind, and he's doing better than McDavid's done. So you gotta. It's just what Jerry was saying. These are great playoffs, really, very intriguing.
I want to ask the biggest Leafs fan, Mark.
What do you make of Marner becoming a playoff beast as soon as he leaves Toronto?
So I want to say a couple of things. First of all, with regards to Jerry brought up an excellent point about Carolina, and I just want to address something that Maven and I were discussing earlier with regards to the Leafs. Rob Brindamore, the coach in Carolina, definitely has that room by his fingertips. They're all bought in. They're locked in. Some great players. Just like Eric Tulsky, the GM there, makes some great acquisitions, right? Stan Coven, Jackson Blake, a second-round pick. Igor's out of free agency. Stan Coven via trade. Freddie Anderson, like Jerry was saying, is locked in, better than we've ever seen. So this kind of stuff transpiring allows success. On top of all that, Carolina had a great route. So we'll see what happens in the the conference final. I believe there's a good chance they'll represent the East. I don't think they beat Colorado in the Stanley Cup if Colorado gets there, and I don't think they beat Vegas either. They just don't match up well against them because both teams are bigger, more physical than the teams they're accustomed to. And I actually think Buffalo can give them fits because Buffalo is not as good yet, but they have that same physicality. Now, with regards to the Leafs and Marner, I think there's two interesting things. I'm happy for Mitch as a player. As the Maeve was saying, I think it was time for him to leave. At the same time, I also think that playing Utah and playing Anaheim in the first 2 rounds of the playoffs are very different than playing Boston and Tampa. If you look at the standings, I think Utah and Anaheim each have like less than 100 points. And just remember, the Leafs on average played opponents that had 105 points. So regular season success being paramount to who you play is important. And also, I just want to say, Utah and Anaheim are not physical defensively or offensively as the way Boston and Tampa were in the years that we battled with them. So I'm not trying to take away from Mitch's performance. I'm super happy for him. It's an amazing story. Looks like it was time that he moved on. Would it have been nice if he told us earlier and allowed us to recoup proper assets for him? That sure would have been nice. But at the same time, and I'm not trying to discredit his playoff performance, but you have to look at the body of work he did in the East compared to what he's doing out West in his first season there. And when you're playing teams that are younger, less experienced, and less physical, a player like that is going to be more successful.
Maeve, what do you think?
What do I think? What I said. This guy has found his game in a more hospitable situation. A different coach who knows what the hell he's doing. Torts knows how to handle a guy like Marner. So that everything fits for Marner because you have to be in a situation where you feel comfortable. So how many more years does he have to be uncomfortable in Toronto? Everything is going downhill. Your buddy Tavares he's going downhill. He was supposed to, they brought him in to win a Stanley Cup. That's how dumb they were. They win a Stanley Cup. Bad captain, didn't do anything. So I'm very happy about Vegas because I like that's a pure American team, and the owner doesn't sit around doing nothing. He says we got to do something. He gets himself a coach when nobody else would do it. And Torts, of course, goes in there. He goes into the cauldron. That's wonderful stuff. So I'm just enjoying the playoffs. And I can't see anybody dumping on Mitch Marner after what he did last night. That's why they got him. He's a playoff player, but in Toronto, nobody's a playoff player because they never win the cup.
I will say that Marner actually underperformed his regular season. I am happy for him. Now, he's been great for Team Canada on the international level as well. Going back to his World Junior days.
I agree.
I think Marner is just flourishing under Tortorella.
Also, remember, he's playing with players like Barbashev and Eichel, and these guys they're going to go retrieve the puck for him, and he can go work his magic.
Yeah. Maeve, do you have a joke for us to close the show?
We were just talking about Vegas, right? Well, have you ever been there? Have you ever bet in Vegas?
Oh, yeah.
No, I'm talking to the hostess. Elena,
I've been to Vegas a few times, but I never bet.
How about you, T-Bag? Have you bet in Vegas?
Yeah, I won $40 on blackjack, and my wife and I raced out of the room. We got $40. Let's get out of here.
Very short.
Jackpot.
A very short Vegas story. My friend Jack hit it big in Vegas. He drove there in an $80,000 car, and he returned home in a $20,000 bus.
Dave, I was actually there. I didn't hit the casino. I didn't gamble there. I went to a game in the Fortress in Vegas, and that was awesome.
Well,
yeah. I'll tell you my one Vegas memory. My wife and I went, 2009, 2010, somewhere in there. And walking into the casino for the first time, and you open the doors and you walk in, and it's like boom. It's like a brick wall of cigarette smoke. It's just like you forget that smoking is still allowed in those buildings. So yeah, it was it took a
It's
while to
wild
become
down there.
nose blind to it. Yeah.
Yeah. They also pump oxygen so you don't get tired and you can play all night.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and there's no clocks. There's no
Yep.
clocks, so you don't know what time it is.
It's very hard
Yep.
for the players. It must be hard for the players to come down there on the road and take it seriously, lock in.
Well, thank you
Good
so
work.
much, Mark. Always a pleasure having you on the show. Thanks
Thanks for
you for
having me,
joining.
guys.
And to everyone watching and listening, don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow Bottle Rocket everywhere. And we'll see you next time.
Cheers, guys.
Thank
Be
you, guys.
well. Stay safe.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah.